I know what you're thinking. The economy is deteriorating so fast. There's no way you're going to be able to actually thrive and prosper, let alone survive. Well, I'm going to tell you how you can position yourself to have that thriving and prospering future for yourself. But the first thing we need to look at is number one, the current economic conditions. Then we're going to get into the medium term and the longer term as well. I've got it all written down, pen and paper today, because I want to explain this to you and I want to make sense of it for everybody so that we can actually be in that position to not worry about our survival and start to trigger that part of our brain that goes into the fright or flight mode. No, we don't want that. We want to be able to have everything in order so that we can sleep well at night. We can make the right decisions for ourselves and our families. That's what this is all about. So I'm going to get into all of this today. Stick with me. Let's begin. First thing we got to look at is the current economic conditions. And unfortunately, in some aspects, they're not exactly up to par. You could see some examples here, which I'll show you momentarily. The first things that we need to talk about is the employment trends, and that's both the employment and unemployment. We got some issues. We also have inflation being entrenched, as well as demographics trends. I'm going to cover that right here and now. These are some big things that I've been covering over the last while. I know you've seen them. I know you've talked about them in the comments, and I think it is something to think about. Just with the only demographic issue, if that was the only issue, we're in trouble, because globally we've got a big problem. Not only is the issue of demographics a problem in Europe and Japan, oh no, that is starting to be an issue everywhere. People didn't have enough children, and now we are seeing the concern where we've got aging populations all the way through Europe, all the way into Canada, the US, of course Japan, but other spots in Asia as well. You can't have a sustainable economy with this going on. So let me break this down real quick, okay? This is just one example. Trucking firm that got $700 million US bailout declares bankruptcy 3 years after receiving the $700 million. You could see right here, Yellow is filing for bankruptcy. You probably heard about this. There's different reasons why companies fail. It's never just one reason, but this is one factor that we are seeing coming up all the time. But what about this? Interesting article if you have the time to read it in the Wall Street Journal. The era of ultra cheap stuff is under threat. Factories across Asia are struggling to attract workers, which is a bad news for Western customers accustomed to inexpensive goods. Very interesting stuff. If you look through it, it isn't just about China. This is about Vietnam. They give you this example in here, and they're talking about how the factories are trying to entice young workers. There are in Vietnam, the average worker, I believe it was 30 or 31 in the factory. Previously, that was people in their 20s. In China, average factory worker is 40. They cannot bring the young people in. They would rather work in a shop versus working on the factory floor. So these companies right now have to spend more money in order to get them in. They're putting cafes, they're putting yoga. And what they said in here was literally that these people, they're looking at the Kardashians and they're saying, hey, I suddenly don't want to work in a factory. It doesn't seem like a nice environment for me. So the factories are struggling. So what does that mean? They got to increase the salaries. If they're increasing their salaries, input costs have moved higher, and they are going to translate into higher prices for everybody globally. Everybody globally. Your stuff is going to be inflation entrenched until, though, there is one thing that's going to change. I'm not necessarily saying that prices are coming down, but there's going to be something that changes, and we'll talk about that in the long-term scenario. Can you guess what that is? We'll talk about it in a minute. All right. Let's look at the medium term, something that I brought up fairly recently, in fact, and I want to talk about the bond market, specifically with the Fed being the buyer of last resort. Do you remember this video I covered? Well, this was an interesting one because the Federal Reserve, they're doing quantitative tightening. They don't want to do quantitative easing, right? We're going through this. They're trying to get rid of the balance sheet. At least that's what they say. We were at almost $9 trillion on the balance sheet. And now they're bringing that down, and they supposedly are normalizing the balance sheet. And this means slowly but surely letting the treasuries and the mortgage-backed securities fall off their balance sheet, a few $1 billion a week, getting rid of that, okay? Fine. You just got one problem, though. If the US government, their intention right now is to put a lot of money out there in terms of debt, I should say. Debt is money. They're trying to put a lot of debt out there in order to pay their bills. Well, what if there aren't enough customers for that debt? Well, the Federal Reserve has to come in to be the buyer of last resort. This is it. It's just talking about bulging sales of U.S. Treasuries are about to deliver a major test of investor demand and determine whether a sell-off has room to run as the market braces for the biggest round of refunding auctions since last year. The interesting thing about this, I don't know if a lot of people realize this. So this process and what they're doing is going to send the yields for the, let's say the 10-year Treasury, the 30-year, like the longer term stuff. It's going to send those yields higher. Going to send them higher. What does that do? Well, remember the yield curve inversion that I've talked a lot about? Well, it isn't when it inverts, it goes down into the negative that we see a problem. It's when it starts to come back up. During that process, it's the signal of a recession. This right here, in what they're doing, often signals a recession with essentially 100% accuracy. I am telling you right now, step by step, exactly how this is occurring. We're now in the medium term. Do you see the problem here? This is a big issue. A big issue. And it gets worse when we move into the long term. But don't fret. Don't be a victim. Don't just say, I'm going to put my hands up and I'm not dealing with it. I'm going to wait for the UBI and we're all good. Please, let's talk about not just the survival aspect, but the thriving and the prospering too. I will get to that at the end, but I want to show you this all together. I hope you understand this. If you don't, please let me know in the comments below and I'll break that down. I'll do a full video about it if we need to. Absolutely, I'd be happy to. Long term. Okay. We have a lot of long-term issues, but for the purposes of this video, I'm mentioning a few of them. And so we've got, obviously, robotics. We've got AI and automation that are being put into place. We've got unaffordable assets like, let's say, real estate, and of course, generational homes, which I believe that you're going to have people that can't move out of their parents' house. Maybe the grandparents move back into their house. Not necessarily new in some cultures, but overall, just because of cost, not because of a cultural thing, but you're going to have multiple families living in one home. That's going to become more common. Some places of the world right now, they're just trying to divide, they're trying to split, they're trying to do anything they can with the section of their home that they have. So if they have a lot, they can now split that lot. A lot of places like Toronto and other areas are starting to create new zoning laws where you're allowed a secondary dwelling on the property. And that would be something for, let's say, a work from home area, which you can have an office. So you can have a smaller home, but then you have a secondary dwelling at the back where you could do a work from home scenario. Or it could be for, let's say, an Airbnb situation, or it could be maybe a guest house, whatever the case is. They're allowing these things knowing that you've got problems with the real estate. So this is an issue, okay? Generational situation, as well as the cashless society and the CBDC, the Central Bank Digital Currency. All of that are issues. Let's quickly look at some of these examples. This is just talking about the robots, one after the other. All these companies are bringing in robots and how much they're spending, okay? Millions here, billions there. It is definitely an issue. Amazon enters healthcare. Generative AI market adds chatbot tools. AI leaders create industry watchdog as government scrutiny grows. So there's the regulation aspect, which hasn't come in yet. I want to see what happens with that. Very interesting stuff. Home prices hit record highs in nearly 2/3 of major markets. And, this is in itself, this is a whole deal. And then we have this. Australia's big four banks say that they are committed to providing cash services to customers despite some branches no longer offering over-the-counter transactions. Oh, yes, that's right. They're not getting rid of cash. They just don't have any cash. Can you believe this? My friends in Australia, your banks, they don't have cash, but they're not getting rid of cash. If somebody can explain that to me, please let me know in the comments. I'm interested to see the lyrical wordsmith that they would like to be. Okay. All right. We want to talk about the solutions, how to prosper, how to thrive. What are you going to do in these circumstances? Current, medium, long term. I hope you understood everything I said today. Like I said, if not, let me know. Prosper, thrive. How are you going to do that? You're going to sit back? You're going to relax on this? No. You're going to go head first. I've never worked this hard in my entire life. Right now, I am working myself to the bone, but I'm still doing other things. I'm still exercising. I'm still doing what I need to do. I'm still got the food growing. I still do everything I possibly can because I have to. Because that's the time we are in now. It is not a time. As we move into recession, you have to do more work. When we move into recession, that's when you supercharge it because everything contracts and you got to go head first into it, break free from it, and become stronger on the other side. You will do that if you stick with me. I'm going to keep pushing you. Of course, everybody in the mentorship group is going to hear from me. Let me tell you, okay? Mentorship group. I want to say hi to you. Prosper and thriving. You need geographical diversification. You have heard me say this before, but it is essential. You need to plant your flag. I'll talk about that in a second. Power, water, food, everything that you can do, all of these do make a difference. You got to hold assets and have business in areas where people are moving in, not where they're moving out. You got to be honest with yourself. Is the place you are in going to be thriving 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Be honest. Is that where the money's moving in, or is it kind of stagnant? What does it need to make it to the next level? You got to look for demographics trends in your area. You got to look at what type of jobs are available. You got to understand that if it's an industry that simply is just going away, it's the dodo bird. Well, are you the one that wants to be there, or do you want to be ahead of the trend and get on out of there? This is important. So you got to have businesses that have this geographical diversification, of course, whether you're investing in a business or whether it's your own business. When we talk about power, when we talk about self-sufficiency, right here, example, microgrids are giving power to the people. Just one example, smaller communities getting together, community aspect. Shout out to all my fans on the Discord. Modern 7-flag theory. The flag theory is basically where you plant all these different flags, where you've got citizenship and residency one place. You've got taxation residency in another place. You've got offshore company there. You got offshore bank in there. It isn't as expensive as some people think, but this is what we've got to learn, okay? As we have more means, we apply not more to the same thing. Like I know a lot of people, they'll put literally just millions upon millions of dollars into certain type like paper assets. I want millions of dollars worth of these assets when they don't have any flags planted elsewhere. This is crazy talk. It's crazy talk. You got to understand the value in this, okay? And then I just wanted to talk about the fact that we'll just summarize here. There are a lot of things. You've got the short term, medium, long term, okay? All of these things, but you're not going to be a victim. You're not going to sit back. I want you to just for a moment think about these things for yourself and see how you can assess these. If you need anything from me, you let me know. I think it's real cool. Now, comments. I am highlighting the comment of the day. This one right here. Okay, you can see it for yourself. From Cloning is Too Good for Sheep. He says, 14% fall year on year in exports out of China. Biggest fall being exports to the USA from China. I want to highlight this comment. I said, hey, this is huge. I really do want to watch this data, and I'll provide this for you in another video. We're going to look at that in addition to some other stuff. Shout outs right there. Thank you very much for your comments. I'm going to try each and every day to highlight one comment from you guys. I think it's just interesting. If you're not already, you want to be part of this community. You want to know how you're going to not only survive, but thrive and prosper. Join the Discord down below. Click that link. We now have over 1,000 people and more are joining every day. I can't even keep up with all the stuff in there. Click that link in the Discord and I'll see you there.